Hey everybody, my name is Nicolette Electra, and today I wanted to go ahead and start a brand new series with you guys that I have been debating starting for a while, and it's going to be 12 things that I've learned pretty much going through my entire photography time. I've been doing photography now for 12 years, doing all types of works, so I want to kind of break down that process from beginning to where I am now. How I started, where I'm at now, the different types of shoots I've been able to accumulate, so on and so forth. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button to watch every single part. Today what we're going to jump into to start is going to be my beginning steps in photography. Where did I begin? How did it all come about? All that jazz. So when I first started, I started when I was about 18, maybe even 17 years old. It's a story that a lot of people don't really know. You know, they kind of just assume like, oh, you just started or you've been doing it for a while, so on and so forth. But no, when I started photography, I was 17 or 18 years old, and it started completely by accident. I think that's not something that you hear very often anymore, is that people starting photography on accident. They start it now and they want to go all in and they want to become rich at it. It's a whole thing. My story did not start like this. So I picked up a camera because I would work on a lot of video projects with friends, and I remember they always had like cameras with interchangeable lenses, and I was like, this is kind of cool. I kind of want to buy one for myself. So I worked really hard. I was working a restaurant job and I saved $800 and went to Best Buy and bought myself my first camera, which was a T3i. Now, before this moment, I always had a small camera strapped to my wrist. That was like my thing. I would always ask Santa for small cameras, but nothing was professional. Everything was just kind of handheld, grab and go up until this point. So here I am, 17 or 18 years old. I get my new camera and I start experimenting pretty much instantly. I would have my friends like go out, start posing for me, doing the whole jazz. We would go to different events, different parks, try to get those edgy things. And if friends were not available, the way I started with my photography is by what I would call elaborate selfies. I would go out with a tripod and a timer and a fresh fit and go take pictures of myself. Sounds vain, doesn't sound like something that I would do nowadays, because I really don't. But that's where it started, and that's where it kind of, you know, got the ball rolling per se. Like I said, when I first started, I started with a Canon T3i. That's what I began with. It was a very simple camera, nothing too crazy. It was a crop sensor, and I knew nothing about it, you know. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by people who did kind of push me in the right direction. And when I say the right direction, I mean learning how to use my camera on manual. I would always use it on auto, and every time that I would sit there and talk to my friends or people that I was working with at the time, they would be like, hey, you need to learn your settings. And so off the rip, within the first year of me having it, I started experimenting. One of my first jobs I got as a photographer was actually working with a wedding company. And I completely recommend doing that if you can find somebody in your city or in your town to basically train you on how to do photography. We would sit down at a Starbucks like once every couple weeks and sit and talk about the camera, different settings, what settings they expected for me to use while shooting. And then obviously when I was working with them, there were other lessons that came about, but working with them was one of my first jobs that I had in the photography space. And I think I was getting like 15 to 20 bucks an hour, which to me was like, wow, this is crazy. But of course, you know, the weddings would come, you know, not necessarily every day. It would be like, oh, it's on the weekends, some Saturdays, some Sundays, so on and so forth. That, I would say though, was probably my first photography job that I had. Others obviously came, but that one was the first one and probably the most consistent one that I got off the rip. Now, when it comes to what made me decide to go professional, it really took a long time. Like I said, when I started, this was a very accidental thing. I did this just for myself, really. And it slowly developed into something more than what I could have expected. But it took me a good 5 or 6 years, I think, of doing photography to even consider myself a photographer, or to even feel comfortable charging a certain amount of money. Not because I didn't know what I was doing, not because I was like a lost cause, but it was just, I didn't feel like I had enough experience to charge people. And that is something that I feel like a lot of people nowadays, they jump to. They want to charge you off the rip. They have 1 week experience and they think that they are worth a crazy amount of money, and to me, that's never been me. I've always been one who wants to sit and learn and understand something first, and then I'm down to like go and charge. But I didn't really become professional till at least 6 years deep, I would say, like professional. Maybe 4, you know, give or take, if we want to kind of give it a little bit more of an early life. But yeah, I would say like 6 years deep, I was starting to feel like, okay, I finally know what I'm doing and I am going to start charging accordingly. Personally, I sit here and I look back on that time frame and I think about how creative I was so young. And I think about all the friends and people that were down to just kind of let me photograph them for free so that I could get the experience that I needed. I think it was such a pivotal time, and I think that a lot of people need to bask in that time of just learning, shooting, doing all that sort of stuff. I think the beginning is a part that people don't forget. You will never forget, because it's such a just interesting time for you. And if I was to go back in time, I would totally tell my younger self, like, keep doing what you're doing, keep going, don't give up, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself a little bit more. I definitely had photographer friends who would tell me like, hey, like try this photo project, hey, try this photo project, try to do this. And I remember being like, no, I don't need to do that. And I wish that I would have done some of those things. For instance, I had a photographer friend of mine tell me like, hey, you see this picture? It's a picture of like some fruits per se. And it wouldn't be a picture, it would be a painting. And he would say, try to make this painting, but with lighting and photography. And I was like, no, I don't need to do that. Like, for what? And now in hindsight, I'm like, that was one of the biggest lessons I probably could have learned at the time, is testing myself, testing my abilities, learning how to manipulate light, and learning how to use my camera to the best of its abilities. So I wish I did a little bit more of that, but again, hindsight is always 20/20, but it was such a nice time for me. Moving forward, this is actually a question that I do get quite often, and that's like, hey, what kind of camera should I get starting off? I will always stand behind, get the camera that you can afford. Do not get a camera that's fancy, that has all these bells and whistles, and it's expensive, and it's this and that, because at the end of the day, if you don't know how to use your camera, I'm sorry, you're not gonna go nowhere. You know, you just aren't. If you don't know how to use your settings, if you don't know what the difference is between different lenses, if you don't understand how to use lighting, so on and so forth, it's not gonna be a benefit to you. So I love that I started off with such a simple camera. I wish more people would. And I would totally recommend that for anybody who is looking to start their photography journey now, is start with what you can afford and slowly build up after you figure out the things that you like, the things that you don't like, and you know how to use your camera from the inside out. With that said, that's a little bit of my behind the scenes story of how I started in photography, how it was a complete accident, how it wasn't something purposeful, and how it ended up becoming one of the greatest loves of my life how many years later. So stay tuned, come back, subscribe. We're gonna have part 2 coming soon from this 12-part series of my 12 years so far of doing photography. Stay tuned. See you in the next video.